America 250, The Dogs, Episode 5, Seaman. Welcome to America 250, The Dogs. What if the most important member of the Lewis and Clark expedition wasn't human? He didn't write journal entries. He didn't map rivers. He didn't negotiate with native tribes. But he hunted. He guarded. He survived. And without him, the journey may have looked very different. This is the story of a dog named Seaman. In 1803, the United States doubled in size overnight through the Louisiana Purchase. But owning land on paper and understanding it were two very different things. President Thomas Jefferson wanted answers. He wanted maps, knowledge, information. He wanted to know what exactly the United States had purchased. So he sent a small expedition west into territory few Americans had ever seen. Among the men chosen for that mission was a dog. Not a mascot, not an afterthought. A working member of the expedition. Seaman was born around 1803. Like many details from his life, his exact birthplace remains unknown. What we do know is that Meriwether Lewis purchased him in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. At the time, Pittsburgh was one of America's western gateways, a place where civilization gradually gave way to frontier. Seaman was a Newfoundland, a breed known for strength, intelligence, swimming ability, and remarkable endurance. He was a large dog, powerful, capable of working in water, rough terrain, and difficult weather. Historians estimate he likely weighed somewhere between 100 and 150 pounds. His shoulder height may have approached 3 feet. As for his appearance, that remains a matter of debate. Most modern statues and illustrations depict him as black, but some historians believe he may have been black and white. Others suggest he may have carried reddish coloring. The records simply describe him as a large dog. There were no photographs, no official breed standards, only descriptions left behind by the people who knew him. One detail we do know with certainty is his price. Lewis paid $20 for Seaman. Today, that would equal several $100s. At the time, it represented a significant investment. Lewis wasn't buying a pet. He was purchasing a working animal for a dangerous expedition, and he expected that dog to earn his place. The Lewis and Clark expedition had a clear purpose: explore the newly acquired Louisiana territory, map rivers and landscapes, document plants and animals, establish an American presence in the region, and search for a practical route to the Pacific Ocean. This wasn't simply exploration, it was strategy. Jefferson personally supported the mission and selected Meriwether Lewis to lead it. Lewis, in turn, chose William Clark as his co-commander. Together, they assembled what became known as the Corps of Discovery. The group included soldiers, frontiersmen, hunters, laborers, interpreters, and specialists. Among them was Sacagawea, whose knowledge and guidance would become essential to the expedition's success. The journey ahead would cover thousands of miles. They would travel up the Missouri River, cross the Rocky Mountains, reach the Pacific Ocean, and somehow make it back home. And through every mile of that journey, Seaman traveled alongside them. Seaman was not a passenger. He worked. The journals of Meriwether Lewis occasionally mention the dog and provide glimpses into his daily contributions. He hunted. Lewis recorded Seaman catching squirrels and birds, helping supplement the expedition's food supply. That may sound insignificant today, but on an expedition where every calorie mattered, small contributions added up. At night, Seaman became something equally important, an alarm system. Long before humans noticed movement in the darkness, dogs often sensed it first. A sound, a scent, a shift in the wind. Those instincts had protected humans for thousands of years, and they continued to do so on the frontier. Seaman also faced danger. One account describes him confronting a buffalo. Another records an incident in which Native Americans attempted to steal him. Large Newfoundland dogs were rare and valuable. His size, strength, and abilities made him highly desirable. Lewis was furious, not because valuable property was threatened, because Seaman mattered. He was part of the expedition, a member of the team. Food shortages presented another challenge. There were times during the expedition when survival itself became difficult. Historical accounts from frontier America make it clear that dogs were sometimes consumed when food ran out. Harsh realities often forced harsh decisions. But there is no evidence that Lewis ever considered Seaman expendable. Instead, the journals reveal something else: concern, protection, attention. Again and again, Seaman appears not as equipment, but as a companion whose welfare mattered. He crossed rivers, climbed mountains, endured storms, faced heat and cold. Everything the expedition endured, he endured too, and somehow he survived it all. In 1806, the Corps of Discovery returned home. The mission had succeeded. They had crossed the continent, mapped vast regions, expanded American knowledge of the West, and completed one of the most famous expeditions in history. Seaman came home with them, alive, but the story becomes less certain after that. 3 years later, in 1809, Meriwether Lewis died under circumstances that remain debated to this day. Was it suicide? Murder? Something else entirely? Historians still disagree. And Seaman's final years remain difficult to reconstruct. Some later accounts suggest the dog did not live long after Lewis's death. Stories claim he remained near his master's grave, that he refused food, that he grieved. The evidence for that is incomplete, the details uncertain, but the bond between the two is not. That much appears throughout the journals and surviving records. Today, Seaman stands in bronze and stone across the United States. Visitors can find statues of him at sites connected to the Lewis and Clark story, at Fort Clatsop, near Lewis and Clark historical sites, along trails that commemorate the expedition. Sometimes he stands beside Lewis and Clark, sometimes slightly behind them, often overlooked by visitors focused on the famous explorers, which is fitting because that's exactly where he spent most of his life, not leading the expedition, not following it, but serving as part of it, day after day, mile after mile across a continent. Seaman never wrote a journal. He never signed a treaty. He never claimed land. He never held office. But he did something just as important. He made the journey. He survived it. And through that survival, he became part of one of the defining stories in American history. His story reminds us that exploration wasn't just about maps or governments or famous names. It was also about partnership, trust, reliance, and survival. The same bond that had connected people and dogs for thousands of years continued westward into the unknown. Because as America expanded, people weren't doing it alone. They never had. Thank you for listening to America 250, The Dogs. In our next episode, we'll continue westward and explore how dogs help shape life on the growing American frontier. Because then, as now, we were a pack. I'm Andrea LeGros, and I'll see you next time.